I started realizing that 2 of the doctors had passed away, but I couldn't find a death notice on the third one, Dr. Ossicini. And so I got in touch with a Jewish journalist in Rome, and she said, "Oh yeah, he's still alive." And I said, "Well, I'm flying over there right now." So I immediately booked a flight, flew to Rome, and we sat down and interviewed him. And that's how the film was born. So
And there's
let's
a
have a
nice
long-winded
picture of you.
answer.
You have
Yeah.
that nice picture on your website with him, right?
Yeah.
So my next question was, what drew you to the story? So you just saw something on Facebook that kind of piqued your interest?
That's all it was. Honestly, I was killing time and I should have been working. And I was just going through Facebook and just looking at dog pictures and birthday greetings and just usual crap on Facebook. And I saw this and I said, this is one of the coolest stories I've ever seen. It's just one of those aha moments that you have in your life where something just comes to you and it's like a gift. And I also, not ironically, but interestingly, my mother was Sicilian and I became a citizen of Italy about 12 years ago. And my daughters are citizens too. So I have a real connection to the Italian people and the Italian culture, and Italian food and Italian wine and Italian music and everything Italian. So that even cemented it more for me. And then, I just tried to figure out how I was going to make this movie. But the story is just so compelling. I mean, it's the best elevator pitch, which in Hollywood they call an elevator pitch. It's the one sentence version of a movie. And this one sentence version, doctors make up a fake disease to save Jews from deportation. It's like, well, how much better does it get than that? It's a heroic story.
That's what's really great about working as part of the film festival with Eileen and my other colleagues, is that these films come across our computers and we learn so much. Like, had no idea. I didn't know. We showed a film a few years ago about the Nazis being in Greece. I didn't know the Nazis were all the way in Greece. So, I mean, for me, it's a tremendous learning experience.
Yeah. And it's such a big story,
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about how you compose music for film and how that's different from directing them.
Well, like I'll just give you an example. I'm just finishing a movie called Linked. It's a story of a bunch of teens who bully a teen. And then when they bully the teen, it's on a social media platform, on a fictional social media platform like Instagram. And when they bully this teen, they all start to die. Like they start getting murdered. It's kind of like I Know What You Did Last Summer. It's a teen horror film. And so the director shot the movie and cut the movie. And then he delivered me a cut film. So all the scenes were as they were. And then I wrote the score to the visuals, basically. So I'm the last guy to take the ball over the goal line. In the case with Syndrome K, actually making the film, we shot interviews, we shot recreations, we licensed a bunch of footage from all sorts of different archives around the world and put together this sort of pastiche of trying to tell this story with very little footage. We have 3 pictures of Dr. Sacerdoti, the Jewish doctor, and we have 1 interview, which was actually done by the Shoah Foundation right around the year 2000, which is, if we didn't have that, we've got no movie, because it's the only time he ever went on camera and talked. And then, of course, we've sat down Dr. Ossicini ourselves, and that was really the definitive interview with him. And then Dr. Borromeo's son, who's in there, and then the 2 survivors, which we shot on the same trip to Rome. So in this case, we put the film together, and then I'm writing music while my picture editor's working, and he's cutting scenes together. And then I have to basically critique myself, which is kind of weird. But, and my editor helps me too. I trust him. So, we're giving each other notes and like, oh yeah, this cue's too active, or you should, some people told me to take music out, and I had people watch it to just try to, because you lose your objectivity after a while. So, I mean, the process is the same once I get there, but when I'm directing, I'm trying to, put a story together, and we're talking about the Allies, and we have a narrator in there. So, all that stuff,
I'm not musical, although I did suffer through piano lessons for a period of time. How do you write the music for a scene? Like, what inspires you? How do you take it from, here to the notes to actually being in the film?
Well, I think that the simple answer to it is the film dictates what the score is going to say. So the sort of lyrical theme in there that you hear at the end when Dr. Ozacchini dies is, that's something I just I think I wrote it when I was walking and I sang it into my iPhone. And then I came home and played it on the piano, and then I rendered it with a full symphony orchestra and a vocalist. So it really is about what my musical instincts bring to the party, and then how I'm inspired and what I want to say. And like some of those scenes, like the deportations and and the active, when all of the Rus is on, all the sort of active music I wrote. I just sort of craft it to the visuals and try to make the visuals look like they make sense, because it really is kind of the Greek chorus. It's what's behind, it's another character in the film, and it's what, it comments on the scene, and it creates a lot of pace. And the music's out of there, it doesn't play the same way. The film plays very slow. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's such an inspiring way to have saved people. I mean, we've watched tons and tons of films about, people saving 10 kids here and, taking 100 kids on a train transport. But this was so ingenious. Did the doctor explain how they came up with this syndrome K sort of idea?
Well, I think by the way, there's a little bit of an inherent conflict with the Borromeo family and the Ozacchini family, because both are trying to claim that they came up with it. But what I think at the end of the day happened was they kind of did it together. And, I hope this came across in the film, the proximity of the hospital, which is in Tiber Island, and the Jewish ghetto, which is literally 200 meters away. So I was standing in the hospital in the ward, and I look across the Tiber and I can see the great synagogue of Rome. I mean, I could probably throw a baseball across the river and almost hit the synagogue. So I think what it was, they just felt like there was not a lot of love lost between the occupying Germans and the Italians and the doctors. And yes, these were people they didn't know, but I think there was and Dr. Ozacchini was a big time anti-fascist, and he was tortured by the Gestapo. I mean, I showed in the movie what happened to him. He was kind of a badass, honestly. And the Italians, think about it. They named the syndrome after the head of the SS and the German general. So if that's not like the Italians, flipping the bird, I'm Italian. I mean, there's no love lost there. And again, it was really bad in Rome, and it got worse and worse and worse until the Allies got there. So,
well, I think that's the interesting part of the idea and the film, is that they save these people right in front of the Nazis.
Oh yeah. And there was the reprisals. I don't think I need to talk in the film about the Nazis and their capability for reprisals, but there was an instance, and I didn't put it in the film because I couldn't figure out a way to put it in the film, but there was an SS bakery in Rome that they took over, that they used for their own food. And these 10 Italian mothers who were so desperately hungry, they broke into the bakery at night and stole wheat, flour, yeast to make their own bread. And when the SS found out, they caught the 10 women, lined them up on the Tiber, and machine gunned them. So, that's an atrocity. There's so many atrocities in this war. You don't need me to tell you that story because everybody kind of knows that story. But what I think it presences, even in Rome, is the threat to the entire staff of the hospital and the doctors and the Jews they were holding at however many they were holding at any given time was real and present. And I think maybe when they started it, they didn't think it was going to have to take very long, because they knew that the Allies had landed in Salerno, which is all the way in the southern part of Italy, and they thought they'd be there in a couple of weeks, and it took 9 months. So the longer it takes, the bigger the risk. There was people that were ratting on people, and like Dr. Sacerdotes said, 5 to 10,000 lira per Jew is what the Nazis were paying. So, I can only imagine what that must have been like, doing that every single day, and especially for Dr. Sacerdotes, since he was basically practicing with fake papers with a fake name, and they never ratted him out. They never found out. It's extraordinary.
So did did every staff person in the hospital know what was going on, or was it sort of a secret and clandestine thing between the doctors and whatever nurses were in that specific area?
I'm thinking that most of the staff had to know because there were patients in the hospital, but they weren't sick. I don't think they had signs on the wall that said it. And I think we actually called Fate Bene Fratelli and tried to get them to give us some charts from the 40s of fake patients, but apparently they destroyed them all because they didn't, as soon as they got a patient out of there, they destroyed the chart because
makes sense.
Yeah, they didn't want, so we made our own fake one, but they didn't want, they didn't want anybody to, know what was going on. So they were very secretive about it.
They stay in the hospital for the length of time, or was it like a waypoint between the next safe place that they were going?
I heard different versions of that. Some stayed for a few days, some stayed for several months. I think it was a case-by-case basis. I'm not sure what, I think maybe it was also when they had room in convents and monasteries and places for them to go, they would just kind of underground railroad them to there. But some of the families stayed for extensive time. I'm not sure what made some people stay longer and some people stay less long. But I know there was a lot of flipping going on and a lot of, ins and outs in terms of people changing addresses and changing names and getting fake papers and moving around. So it was quite an operation they had. And by the way, there was a second hospital doing it too, which we didn't want to talk about in the film because Fate Bene Fratelli was the main one, but they also were doing the same ruse in another hospital. So
you have to think like how people put their lives at risk for saving strangers.
Yep.
I mean, for saving strangers, and do we have that capacity now in 2020? Would there be people who would do that now?
It's a really good question. And these three guys, my impression of them, and I got to sit across the table from Dr. Ozacchini, they never really spent any energy crowing about this and did not draw attention to themselves. And that's maybe one of the reasons why this film never got made, because people just didn't know about it. I've told hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people about this story, Jews and Gentiles alike, all over the place. And the first answer I get from them is, wow, I've never heard that story. I was like,
exactly.
Yeah, this is a secret story. People are starting to know because we're playing festivals and the story's getting out there. But, I talked to Roman Jews in the Jewish ghetto who were in their 70s when I was there interviewing in April of 18 that had never heard the story. So their families were there and they might have been little kids or not been born yet, but they didn't know about it. So, there's a couple, if you look, when I first found out about the story, now there's a lot of stuff on Google because of the film, but there was like 2 or 3 little news articles. Dr. Ozacchini did one interview for like some London newspaper. It was a short little interview. But that's really all I could find. There's just precious little info.
That's why these people get their names and a plaque in the Holocaust Museum and in Yad Vashem, because they are righteous people. Yep. Who did it for the right reasons, not for acclaim. So I'm sure there's lots more stories that will continue to come out over the years.
Yeah.
Was it important for you to once you read the story, did you realize how important writing something about the Holocaust would be, given that there's so many Holocaust stories out there? Well,
yeah. A couple things. It was so interesting when I discovered the story, because it was this hurricane of ideas went through my head in literally a minute or 2 minutes. Because I saw the story, I can remember it like I was sitting right where I'm sitting right now on this computer looking at Facebook. And the first thing I thought was, is there a film? No, there isn't a film. Okay. Why isn't there a film? And then the other thing I thought was, I had just seen the reports, and you've probably all seen them online, which is like, oh, only 20% of the high school kids in America know that there's a Holocaust. So I was like, okay, what the hell? Like, I studied that in high school. I knew what it was. I come from Ann Arbor, and Ann Arbor has a really vibrant Jewish community. So I knew survivors. I met some of them. So that was a driving force too. And then there's a whole nother story about Pope Pius XII. And there's all this stuff kind of flying around that he was anti-Semitic. And so I was thinking, well, if that's true and that was the church's stand, I don't even know if I want anything to do with that. And then I looked into it, dug into it, and my conclusion is much different now that I've really, I'm not a historian, but I've really sort of focused in on this little story in Rome. And I have my own opinion about it now. That's changed, but now I think if the Pope's archives are being opened up right now, and it's, his archive is going from 1928 till 1958, or it's a long papacy. And if we find a document that says that Pius wrote in 1943 that says, oh, the Nazis are here, geez, I hope they get rid of every Jew in Rome. Like, wow, I would be shocked, and I would be disgusted. But then at the same time, doesn't this make this story even more extraordinary? Because now they're doing it against the orders of the Pope, who was a mile and a half down the road. I don't think that's true, by the way, but that, I was like, well, maybe I shouldn't do it. And then I'm thinking, well, if that's the truth, then it's even more extraordinary. I mean, it takes some, cojones to do it anyway, right?
Right. And we were talking before we came on that, we've also screened the film Holy Silence, which really shows the trajectory of what happened in the papacy during the time of the Holocaust. So, right. I mean, all these things going on at the same time, and you have to think that Catholics were questioning, their faith and the Pope for not, in Judaism, one of the important tenets is stand up for people who can't stand up for themselves, open your doors to strangers and take care of them. And I believe that's the same thing for Catholics.
Absolutely. And, it's so true. And also remember, the Pope had no army. I try to describe to people, Vatican City is like, it's like Brookline Country Club. It's the size of an 18-hole golf course. That's the whole country. So, he has no army. And, there were 1,500 SS troops inside the walls of Rome, which is like downtown Chicago. It's smaller, actually. It's a little smaller. So, his existential threat to himself was ever present. The people thought they were just going to march into the Vatican and take the Pope away and kill him or do something. So he was also under, a certain amount of threat. They didn't think it was going to come to Rome until it came to Rome, right? So that, and then, he was the Pope for the Catholics globally. Even then it was hundreds and hundreds of millions of people, including 40 million in the US. So there's a lot of things going on. But remember, there's a story that, he has a place called Castel Gandolfo, which Castel Gandolfo to the Pope is like Camp David for our president. And there were Jewish families hiding out at his castle. So if that's the case, and he didn't want that to happen, then why were they at his castle? So,
But so here's your next film, because right. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Did the Pope actually know that there were Jewish people hiding there?
That's a really good question. I think he must have. I couldn't imagine he didn't, but I'm also thinking it was probably dangerous for him to go because the Allies had air superiority and they were strafing the Germans from the air. It was not a fun time to be a German soldier because basically the Luftwaffe was basically completely blown out. Italy didn't even exist. So we were bombing at will. So I don't know, maybe I don't even know if he went there during the occupation. That's a good question.
We just found your next film.
Yeah, and there's another story that I'm pursuing. There was an American kid who went to high school in Rome. His dad was a diplomat. He graduates high school, the war starts, he gets drafted into the army, and the OSS finds out that it's an American kid who speaks fluent Italian who grew up in Rome. So he became a spy. They put him in Rome so he's an American kid named Peter Tompkins who lived in Rome as a spy, who we couldn't find a connection to Fate Bene Fratelli, but for sure he knew that because there was a clandestine radio at Fate Bene Fratelli, and he caused so much havoc for the Germans because he was passing on troop movements to the good guys of the Nazis, of the Germans, Nazis, but Germans, and survived. Some of his messengers were caught and tortured and executed, but he survived. He became very famous in the United States. He went on Johnny Carson and lived a long life, wrote a famous book called The Secret Life of Plants. So I'm trying to get his rights right now because I think that's a feature film, a story about an American. He was friends with like the nastiest SS guys, hung out with them, spoke perfect Italian. So they never knew. Had a fake passport. I have a copy of it. His son sent it to me. His name's like, Bruno Signorelli. And his name's Peter Tompkins. I mean, how much more American or British can you get than that? Spoke perfect English. So I just love when the Nazis have something right under their nose and they never know. And it's like, okay, yeah, let's see.
Yeah, not the smartest people for thinking they were so smart, right?
I remember when Rome was liberated in June 4th, 1944, 48 hours was D-Day, June 6th, 44. So it was not a good week for the Germans. They lost their big capital and then they got slammed in Normandy. And that's where, eventually August of 45, everything ended.
So you're really hooked now. Like you've got a few projects you're thinking about.
Yeah, we're trying to make Syndrome K into a feature film. Actually, we're very, very actively. We have a script and we've got a director, and we're going to make this into a real movie, a real Hollywood movie, which we're really excited about. And in some ways, I can say this because I directed the doc. I think it makes a better movie than a documentary, honestly, because it's such a compelling story, and it's really hard to piece together all these things in a doc. And we did it in a documentary style. But when you hire real actors and you go back there in Rome and you shoot and you do all the period stuff, it's just going to be super compelling. So
who are your choices for the stars of the film?
That's a really, really good question. We had a Zoom call yesterday, and that was one of the things we're talking about. And that's a really good question. We don't know yet. It depends on the budget, because if you make it for $5 million, you get a certain level of name. If you make it for $15 to $20 million, you get a certain brand, access to a certain kinds of names. So we're not sure yet, but we're pretty sure that a streamer like Netflix or Amazon is going to jump all over this because it's a World War II story. It has a good ending. They're trying to grow their audience in Europe. They're trying to get more subscribers in Europe. It's a European story. It's a secret story. So we're very hopeful. And trying to get a movie made is the hardest thing in the world. I mean, it's like
right. So if money was no object,
yeah,
who would you want to star in this film?
That's such a good question. That's a really good question. I haven't thought about it that way. Because the way I'm thinking about it is, we have to know what our budget is, then we can start putting a list together,
right. So you don't want to set yourself up for disappointment then if you choose a $15 to $20 million star and you only get $5 million.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to get Christopher Waltz, the actor, to play Kepler, but he probably wouldn't do it because he was so brilliant in Inglourious Bastards as whatever that character's name was. Do you know the movie I'm talking about, the Tarantino movie? Oh, no. It's a must see. It's my favorite Tarantino movie, and Christoph Waltz played the German heavy, and I can't remember that guy's name. I don't know if he's fictional or not. One of my favorite portrayals of all. I mean, it's just absolutely. It's so cold and so brilliant and so genius. But I would have, if he could be Kepler. He wouldn't do it because he's already done it, and now he's doing all this other cool stuff. So that for him would be going. I think he won Best Supporting Actor. So it's like, but like somebody like that. So
when do you think you might start filming? Is it based on COVID?
It's based on the financial commitment of a financier. So we want to have the script done by holidays. I mean, like the script is written, and we're doing some. What we do is we finish the little details in the script, and then we send it out to cast.
Mhm.
So we send it out to an actor and say, hey, you want to do this? And here's the offer. And this is when we do it. And this is the director and all that good stuff. So
Will
yeah.
you film in Rome?
Oh
Is
yeah.
that the plan?
Yeah. Yeah. You have to film at the hospital. You have to figure out a way to do it, which by the way is not a simple task. That's right in the city center of Rome. And it's like trying to film on Lakeshore Drive.
Mhm.
It's like
Mhm.
right there. So
Is it still a working hospital or?
oh, definitely. Oh, definitely. Oh, yeah. It's a dynamic working hospital. We went there. We did a tour, and they have the Yad Vashem plaque in there. I have a
Mhm.
picture of it. And the really cool thing is Dr. Ozacchini, the doctor we interviewed, the guy who just passed away, his daughter is a physician there to this day. She's in her 50s. So that's pretty cool. There's that through line there.
Yeah. It's amazing. We found often that, people who survived the Holocaust don't really talk about it much. They don't necessarily talk to their children about it much. And the grandchildren are really pulling the stories out and sharing them and making films. So
Especially, it's 75 years ago. 75 years ago, June was the liberation. And these folks are getting up there. Dr. Ottini, when we sat him down, he was 98. So you're at the end of, and then thank goodness for Shoah, because that was the only
right.
record of Sacerdoti anywhere. And the family member he saved, the Amaglia family, she wasn't in there very much, Luisa. So they filmed his interview, and he walks off, and Luisa walks in and sits down at the same couch. So they were still friends, they were still hanging out. I don't know how they're cousins. I forget how they're related. But by the way, Sacerdoti is, if you translate Sacerdoti, it's Cohen.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So
My Italian is not good. So
yeah. So he couldn't use the name Sacerdoti because the Germans would have known he was a Jew.
right.
That's why they
Right.
changed the name to Salviucci.
Interesting.
Cool.
Well, I don't see if anybody has any questions, they can type them into the chat box now. Any last words? What do you hope that people take away from watching this film?
Well, I think it's, I just think having an understanding, first of all, it's, a lot of people don't realize there's a Jewish community in Rome, which I think is, it's one of the oldest Jewish communities in the world. So, and if you go to Rome, by the way, you must go to the Jewish ghetto and eat the fried artichokes and enjoy the restaurants and see the history, because the history is so vast there. And you can, the Great Synagogue of Rome, and then Tiber Island you can't miss, because the hospital's on the only island that's on the Tiber. So you literally have to run into it, and it's just cool to walk around. They probably won't even let you inside, especially now. Yeah, I mean, so that
I'm pretty sure we can't travel there now anyway.
Yeah, I can actually, because I'm a citizen, so I can.
There you go.
Allowed to go, but yeah, I'm not going anywhere right now. But I mean, your question is like, what is the takeaway? What is my takeaway? Is that what you mean?
Like the audience, what do you hope the audience takes away after they watch the film?
Well, I think it's it's a piece of history that people risking their lives and doing good for people they don't know. I think is pretty extraordinary, and people standing up for what they believe in the face of the threat of the most ferocious and cruel army ever assembled. So anyway, there's a couple questions I see.
Yeah, there are a couple of questions. So Karen wanted to know if you've had any responses from viewers of Syndrome K as a disease, that this is proof that COVID-19 is a hoax.
That's a great question. We were talking before we went on, and I just find it so ironic that I made a film about a fake disease in the middle of a pandemic. So that's kind of how I frame it. Like, here's a story about a fake disease, even though we're talking about something that's very real. Is kind of the thing. But so I mean, no, I haven't heard it the other way around though. So.
And then Roberta wanted to know if there were other refugees in the hospital besides Jews. Did they save people besides Jews?
Yes, there were. There were partisans So there were people that were that weren't necessarily Jews. There were Romans that were part of the other parties that the Nazis banned. So some of those guys got hidden as well, and kind of in the same with the same ruse.
Mm.
Um, there was a couple of like there were a couple like escaped prisoners of war that got in there, I guess, that they told us about anecdotally. Um, no Americans that I know of. That would be there's another movie, by the way, having an American prisoner in there. But as far as I know, that's kind of it. Yeah.
Stephen, this was fascinating. We had looked at the film quite some time ago, and I'm glad that we really got the chance to show it, because again, it's the opportunity for us as a community to learn about things that we may never have known about, and then be able to thank the people who saved all those families.
Right. Right. And when I talked to the Soninos, were the two survivors, and they really stressed, the gratitude they had. These guys have grandchildren now.
Right.
And it's what's the line? If you save one person, you save 1,000, or there's some quote like that. And I saw it firsthand. And to get to sit with Dr. Ozacchini, who I've met I've met a lot of famous people because I work in Hollywood, but to meet a real true blue card carrying hero was one of the coolest things I've ever done. And this guy he was just so unreasonable in his strength of character and the way he lived his life. And the cool thing is, I didn't speak Italian, and we had an interpreter there that took our questions and read them off to him. And he looked at me at the end of the interview and, shook hands, and we didn't talk. And he looked at me and he started speaking French to me. And I happened to speak really good high school French. And I thought it was so unusual. So I actually have a conversation with him in French for a minute. And they filmed it. So it's the only time I really, I asked him, are you Catholic? Do you still go to mass? Yes, yes. Do you go to confession? Like he was a very religious Catholic in his life. And I got to ask him that stuff. It was just, it was really amazing.
And that's how I feel about these interviews, is how lucky I am to talk to people who are sharing these stories with the world. I mean, this isn't something that I would have had the opportunity to do had I still been sitting at my desk in Northbrook.
Right.
I'm at home in my office closet. So I mean, there are some silver linings to all this crazy COVID stuff. But thank you so much, Stephen. We really appreciate your time. The movie was great. Please share with us the next episode of whatever you're doing. We love to have filmmakers come back and join us with their second films. Thank you to everyone who joined us this afternoon. We have a couple of more talkbacks for a few more films over this evening and over the weekend. Thank you everyone again for joining us. Take care, be well, have a wonderful Thanksgiving, and be safe.
Back at you, folks. Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Bye.